Is it unwise to commit to monogamy with someone with a much lower SMV as a man? Or is the understanding of male and female nature more important to ensure a successful long-term relationship? Well, what is your priority? That's the thing. Is your priority a successful long-term relationship? What does success look like? Because success is not going to, I hate to go Jordan Peterson like woo-woo fortune cookie on you here, but what does success look like? Just getting married? Is just getting married success? I don't think so. I'm probably going to get into this with James Sexton, Esquire. Next week in Miami, I will be there. I'll be myself, Mike Sartain, and James Sexton, divorce attorney, James Sexton. We will all be in Miami making our rounds. But I would say, he would say, well, if you got a guy who's got a relationship, or he's got let's say a 25-year marriage, and he's in a pit of misery. Is that a successful long-term relationship? No, but you're stuck. So it kind of depends on what you want to define as success first. One of the things I've written about in the past and has been actually reaffirmed by science is the difference in what I call sexual market value ratios. And I'm happy to dig that up for you and read it to you if you'd like. Someone with a much lower SMV. Now, if you as a guy, I think there's this misnomer, right? There's this idea that if you are a 6 and she's a 6, then that's the ideal pairing. It's not. You need to be a 7 and she needs to be a 6, or she needs to be a 6 with value added and you need to be a 7. It's all imperative that it's a 1-to-2 ratio instead of parity, instead of 1-to-1. And I know that sounds really fucked up, but there's multiple studies that show the exact same thing. In fact, I've even read them on this show. That a man who has a higher sexual value than a woman does, that woman will. You want to know a woman the kind of woman who will submit to you is the one who believes, at least perceptually, thinks that she is a half step to 1 step below you in sexual market value. Women don't want a man to cheat, but they love a man who could cheat. Do you want to know the woman that's the dominant guy that she's going to submit to? That guy is at least in her eyes. It doesn't necessarily perceptually true. It doesn't have to be. But in her eyes, she sees that guy as being 1 step above her in sexual market value. That keeps her on her toes. It also keeps competition anxiety. It also keeps dread, which, by the way, Ryan Stone has just written another book about. Competition anxiety, dread, for lack of a better term. It's not an ultimatum. It's not a manipulation tool. It's just this unconscious, unspoken understanding that you're the kind of guy that other men want to be and other women want to fuck, even if it's just like she's a 6 and you're a 7. Right? It keeps women on their toes, and it also keeps them deferential. It also certainly an aid, anyways, in a woman wanting to submit to a worthy man's cause. But those are, by and large, statistically proven better, healthier relationships. Now, the thing that I always get, and stop in your tracks because I know what you're going to say. Well, I don't want to get with an ugly girl. I'm not saying ugly. I'm saying perceptually. So a woman who is an 8 and you happen to be a 6 or a 7, objectively speaking, relatively speaking, but that 8 thinks you're a 9 for whatever reason, doesn't make any difference. It's all perception. She thinks you're a 9 and the rest of the world thinks you're a 6. The only one who really matters is the girl who's the 8 who thinks you're a 9. And how you pull that off is really up to the individual. Okay. Maybe you're like, a lot of guys will say, well, hey, I'm from a physical standpoint, maybe I'm an 8 and she's a 7. She really wants to suck my cock, man. She's really all about it. Right. But I'm an out of work snowboarder and in a transient workforce. I make no money. I don't have any education and my game is just passable. Anyone else would say, well, you're a good looking loser. But that girl who happens to be, an 8 and she thinks you're a 9 because you fulfill sort of this fantasy, or you slip into this role of the alpha that she can't get over. If you fill in, and when you see a really good looking girl and she can't get over a guy, and you look at that guy and you say, this guy's a piece of shit. This guy, he's not that good looking, and he doesn't have a job. He's homeless. Comes from, he kicks his dogs or whatever. Why does she keep going back to this guy? She's so much like you. How many times have you seen that? Even girlfriends, even their girlfriends will say the same thing. Even the women will say, what the fuck do you see in this guy? But she does, perceptually, for whatever reason. It could be daddy issues. It could be anything. But she sees that guy as a 9 and she's a 7 or she's an 8, even though maybe she's a 9 or a 10 herself. She just said, well, she has low self-esteem. And that, by the way, I have to point out, it should also be another rating. I'm going to steal this wholesale from Tom Likas. Okay. Tom Likas used to say, there's regional differences, in rating scores for women. I proposed this at that time is that there should also be 2 scores. There should be like, what's her physicality? If she's like an 8 or a 9. Awesome. But if her self-esteem, if she's a 9 and her self-esteem is a 3, you got real fucking problems. And then that's the positive inversion, right? So if you got a woman who's like an 8 and her self-esteem is a 3, that's when you get those women going, what is she saying, this guy? But the more common situation is a woman who is a 4 on the look scale, but her self-esteem, her ego is like a 9 or a 10. She's full of herself and she thinks she deserves the fucking world. That's actually the more common scenario. You're looking at this pig who thinks she is a 10. You see that all the time. But we've been talking about that for the last 10 or 12 years in the red pill. Those are the ratios that I'm talking about. So the optimal ratio, if I was going to, because we're looking at, people hate it when I turn the sexual market into like intersexual dynamics. They hate it when it becomes commodified because it takes all the power away from women when you do that. If you say she's a 10, or if you can find some way to quantify and qualify, but you quantify women hate to be pigeonholed into, oh, she's a 9, she's a 10. In fact, I've seen schools that will expel students who make these lists of like the girls in their class, and they go, oh, Becky's a 10, Susie's a 4, like they'll go through that. But then what happens is like there are literally apps that will rate those guys so that if another girl actually dates that guy, she'll know what he'll have, like a Yelp review for like the kind of date or the kind of dude he is, or he's great, but his teeth aren't right, or he has bad breath, or he's got a little dick or whatever. Like there are literally apps that women will use amongst other women to say, well, oh, you dated him? I think they might even be called Don't Date Him Girl or something. But they're literally apps that women will make those. They're not even making handwritten lists. It's like, it's high technology, man. He's a good looking guy, but he's not really an attorney. He told me he was going to be an attorney. He doesn't really have a 6-figure income. He was great in bed, but don't marry him, girl. Right? Literally ratings and probably pictures too. I don't know. I haven't seen the most recent versions of these things, but that's acceptable. But it's not acceptable for a man to say, she's an 8. How dehumanizing. You've turned a woman into a number. We all do. Everybody does. Everyone does. And even if we don't vocalize it, we're doing it here. You see, check it. Like the men's ability to determine sexual viability in a woman is instantaneous. And just because we don't put a number to it right there and vocalize it doesn't mean we're not doing it, ladies. So just every man in the world objectifies women. They have to. It's actually a survival trait. It's an evolved adaptation. Men objectify women, period. End of story. In fact, they've done fMRI studies where they will show like a half naked chick and it triggers the synapses in the brain, right, that are associated with tool use. Men look at women part by part before they look at the whole. That's a feature, not a bug of human nature. That's how men, because you know what? The men who did that, they went on to sire the next generation. And if they didn't, you wouldn't be here as a guy. So stop making it into some big, huge socially constructed, it's patriarchy. It's this societal endemic problem. It's problematic that men objectify women. No, it's not. Women love to be objectified. Women would rather be objectified than idealized. They would rather not be set on a pedestal, but they do. They sure as fuck like to be objectified. It is Halloween fucking weekend, right? What did you see last week? What did you see on, I wish I would have been in Vegas. What did you see on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if you went out to the clubs in Vegas, those women want to be objectified. Trust me on it. Take that to the fucking bank. The chicks making videos, TikTok videos in the gym, showing off their ass and going, he was looking at my ass. She wants to be they want to be objectified. So, well, that's horrible. You're turning him into a sexual object. Yes. Women know that. They would rather be objectified than idealized. They don't want to be and by the way, that objectification only applies to guys that are hot, guys that they want that objectification from. It would, if it was only hot guys that were objectifying women, you wouldn't hear anything about it whatsoever. You know, so don't think like embrace your male nature, embrace your animal side. It's always funny. It's like if I were to say that to, you know how like Jordan Peterson always talks about, oh, you have to be a dangerous man. You have to be a sword, but you got to keep the sword in the sheath. You got to be a man who has the capacity for violence. Okay, great. Sounds good. But you're also a man who, biologically, evolutionary speaking, will objectify women too. So if you're going to embrace the capacity for violence, Jordan, you also have to embrace the other shit too. That's why I keep saying there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There's only masculinity and the parts that work well in a gynocentric social order and those that don't. The only time women have a problem with toxic masculinity is when it doesn't serve female imperatives. That's why.